Welcome to the Sky Commander Flight Brief. It's your mission-ready podcast for drone pilot training and aerial insights across Canada.
From Transport Canada rules to real-world drone ops, we break it down, take you higher, and help you earn your wings. Because here at skycommander.ca, we don't just fly.
It hints there's more to it. It's a masterclass, a deeper level, maybe a philosophy or a community focus, perhaps.
It's definitely intriguing, sets them apart from just, a basic tips show. Skycommander.ca is the obvious next step. Precisely. If you're thinking about flying a drone in Canada, boom, this content is aimed right at you.
Powered by skycommander.ca.
The elite podcast for Canada's drone pilot. Okay, let's get started.
We're talking about Beyond Visual Line of Sight, or BVLOS. And this is arguably the highest stakes area of aviation happening right now. The barrier to entry isn't just flight hours anymore. It's about proving you have world-class operational discipline.
That is the perfect way to frame it. We are really at an inflection point. The industry is moving past those, early days of novelty and temporary waivers. It's shifting toward true, durable, industrial scale.
So our mission for this deep dive is really about mastering the professional BVLOS interview. This isn't about impressing someone with sharp maneuvers, is it?
Not at all. It's about proving you are a professional risk manager, a systems operator. It's about proving you're someone who can thrive in a regulated, high-stakes environment.
And we've been looking at a stack of sources that focus really heavily on the regulatory framework the whole industry is shifting toward. We're talking about the proposed new rule set from the FAA, specifically the framework known as Part 108. It's basically the future standard.
Exactly. The sources are pretty clear that the FAA published its proposed BVLOS framework, Part 108, on August 7, 2025. And while that rule is still technically proposed, and a lot of BVLOS operations today still rely on Part 107 waivers or exemptions, every single credible interviewer is hiring toward the kind of operational discipline that Part 108 represents.
So you, the listener, you really need to demonstrate absolute fluency in that future framework because it defines the gold standard for safety and for scale. So if the Part 107 waiver was kind of the exception, Part 108 is trying to do the rule. Why does embracing this matter so much to someone trying to build a career right now?
It matters because BVLOS is really the line in the sand between a side gig and a professional, durable career track. When operations become scalable, the pay increases, stability increases, and you start to unlock those senior roles that go beyond the joystick. Chief pilot, safety manager, operations supervisor, mission planner.
Right.
But to get those high-value positions, you absolutely have to prove safety, regulatory compliance, and the ability to scale operations repeatably.
Okay, let's get into the structure of this. To begin, we have to move past just the basic definition of BVLOS and get into the mindset shift required. What's the fundamental difference between standard visual line of sight flying and this high-level professional BVLOS approach?
Well, the regulatory definition is simple enough. It's any operation where the aircraft isn't maintained within the pilot or crew's direct visual observation. If you can't see it clearly with your own eyes, you're BVLOS. But the mindset shift, that's profound.
And this is the concept that should be ringing in every candidate's ears. BVLOS is not freedom mode. It's not just flying as far as your radio link lets you.
It is fundamentally systems mode. In VLOS, the pilot's eyes and their subjective judgment are the primary safety mitigation. In BVLOS, the moment you lose that direct visual link, safety relies entirely on robust documented procedures, on precise communication protocols, technical redundancies like detect and avoid or DAA technology, and total auditable accountability.
Through logging and documentation.
Yes. If your system fails, you fail. It's that simple.
So Part 107, which is our current baseline, that requires this extraordinary permission, the waiver, to fly BVLOS. Part 108 is the shift to making it a routine operation.
That's right. Part 107 always treated BVLOS as an exception to the rule, which created this, expensive, slow, and non-scalable process. The proposed Part 108 aims to normalize BVLOS by creating a predictable structure. It defines new authorization pathways, it requires approved operating areas, and it mandates rigorous standardized record keeping.
So it's the FAA saying, show us you are a reliable system and we will grant you routine access to the airspace.
That's the deal.
And that normalization immediately brings in risk-based thinking, which we see in the two proposed authorization tiers, the operating permit and the operating certificate. This is a critical distinction, isn't it?
Oh, they will absolutely test you on this. The FAA is trying to match the level of oversight and frankly, the administrative burden to the level of operational risk you're introducing.
Okay, so let's start with the lighter tier, the operating permit.
So the operating permit is intended for a lower risk, more limited scope operations, maybe flights in highly rural, very controlled environments, or those using very small, light UAS. Because the risk profile is lower, the administrative review is meant to be more streamlined. You might think of the P as being for predictable or maybe even prompt. It gives you access, but with strict constraints.
On time, place, and the aircraft itself.
Right.
And then the more complex one, the operating certificate, that's clearly for the big players like package delivery networks or, comprehensive infrastructure inspections over populated areas.
Precisely. The operating certificate is designed for those higher risk, complex, high-frequency operations. This pathway requires a much deeper FAA review, ongoing oversight, and it has two huge mandatory requirements. First, the operator must develop and implement a formal safety management system, an SMS. Second, they have to establish a formal FAA-approved training program.
Okay, let's just pause on the SMS requirement for a second, because just saying the acronym isn't enough for a pro candidate.
Yeah.
An SMS isn't just a binder full of papers. What are the 4 critical components a BVLOS candidate needs to be fluent in?
That SMS requirement is the true cost of entry for the certificate, and it really aligns the drone industry with traditional crewed aviation. The structure is internationally standardized, built on 4 pillars, and you have to be ready to talk about all 4. First is safety policy. This is the commitment from the top, the company's non-negotiable standards and the guarantee of a non-punitive reporting system. Second, safety risk management, or SRM. This is your proactive assessment tool, how you identify new hazards, analyze their severity and likelihood, and then implement mitigations before a flight ever happens.
Another.
Safety assurance, SA. This is the auditing function, how you continuously monitor the operation to ensure the safety measures are actually working and that procedures are being followed. It ties directly into documentation. And finally, safety promotion. This is the culture aspect, training, communication, making sure everyone from the RPIC to the CEO is aware of safety risks.
So if you only know the acronym, you fail the interview. You have to know the practical application of the 4 pillars.
You have to.
So if I'm an interviewer and a candidate just nailed the 4 pillars, I'd immediately ask this. Given the intense administrative and compliance burden of building and operating a full SMS, isn't the certificate system just going to create massive bottlenecks for smaller operators trying to scale?
That's a great follow-up, and it reflects a real industry concern. The FAA's intention is to streamline the result, which is routine BVLOS access. But the path to that result for a certificate holder is it's rigorous. The bottleneck isn't really the paperwork, it's proving you have the culture. Small operators scaling up often just lack the dedicated safety staff to manage a robust SRM and SAT process. They have to hire or contract that specialized expertise, which proves Part 108 is raising the standard for managerial talent, not just piloting skill.
Okay, so moving past the authorizations, let's talk about the technological plumbing that makes all this scale possible. Automated Data Service Providers, or ADSPs. These are the regulated entities that the FAA wants to approve to manage traffic. What exactly is an ADSP, and why can't standard air traffic control just do this?
ADSPs are the crucial link. They are what enables massive scale. Traditional ATC is designed to manage large, fast, cooperative aircraft in defined airways, usually with voice communication. That system fundamentally cannot handle thousands of small, slow, low-altitude UAS flying complex nonlinear routes. It would just collapse. So ADSPs are the proposed solution. They are regulated service providers that interface with the FAA and operators to ensure safe separation and compliance in that low-altitude airspace.
And the sources highlight 2 core services these ADSPs have to provide. First is strategic deconfliction. This just sounds like planning.
It is the foundation of planning. Strategic deconfliction means preventing conflicts long before the flight ever starts. An ADSP uses real-time data on airspace reservations, TFRs, known drone flight plans, all to ensure that your proposed flight path doesn't violate separation standards from other approved operations.
Can you give us a practical example? How does that work?
Sure. Let's say a delivery company wants to reserve a corridor over a suburb between 2 and 3 p.m. The ADSP uses digital mapping and airspace management tools to check for conflicts. Conflicts with other planned routes, nearby heliports, or even like temporary construction that might impact GPS signals. If a conflict is found, the ADSP flags it. It forces the operator to alter the route, the time, or both. The interview hook here is, we use the ADSP to design separation into the mission.
Which leads right into the second core service, conformance monitoring. This is happening during the flight.
Correct. Conformance monitoring is the continuous verification that the drone stays precisely within the boundaries and parameters of the approved flight plan while it's flying. If the drone's telemetry, its altitude, speed, or lateral position deviates past a predefined threshold, the ADSP has to immediately register that nonconformance.
And what are they monitoring specifically in real time?
They're monitoring compliance with the operational container. Did the drone maintain its altitude ceiling? Is its lateral path deviating too much? Has the C2-ling health dropped below the approved margin? If a deviation alarm is triggered, the ADSP then notifies the flight coordinator, who then has to execute their predefined crew actions. This service proves to the FAA that your system is not only safe by design, but safe in execution.
So we've got the regulatory structure and the system layer. Now let's talk about the physical operational requirements that Part 108 is going to formalize. You can't just launch from a random field anymore if you're under Part 108.
No, the physical environment has to be as controlled as the digital one. Operators must first secure area approval-defined area from the FAA. This is a comprehensive vetting process for the geography you plan to fly in. The approval needs to specify not just the boundaries and the operations tempo, but also crucial elements like the takeoff, landing, and loading areas, the TOLs, and also confirmed comms coverage maps for the entire route, and specific lost comms procedures just for that area.
It really sounds like a mini airport application for a small defined area.
It basically is. And the area you launch from is just as restricted. Operations have to occur from pre-designated access-controlled locations. This requirement ensures physical security, it prevents unauthorized interference, and it maintains strict accountability of all the equipment and personnel. If your launch site isn't controlled, your whole operation is compromised.
Let's touch on that critical personnel nuance that often surprises candidates. The proposed Part 108 suggests that the senior roles, the operations supervisor and the flight coordinator, wouldn't necessarily be required to hold an FAA remote pilot certificate. Why is the FAA making that distinction?
This detail is a massive interview differentiator. It shows the FAA is thinking about aviation system management, not just piloting. The FAA recognizes that the skills needed for systemic safety are distinct from the skills needed to physically control the aircraft.
So what are those different roles?
The operations supervisor is the safety head. They're accountable for regulatory compliance, overall system limitations, and ensuring training quality. The flight coordinator handles direct operational oversight and intervention based on the data stream, while the remote pilot in command, the RPIC operating the controls, must hold the certificate. The senior roles are organizational and managerial. They're hiring people who can manage an SMS, conduct root cause analysis, and interface with the FAA, not necessarily people who are experts at hand flying. It just shows the sector is maturing toward that traditional aviation management structure.
Okay, finally in this section, let's connect all this scale to security. Part 108 mandates compliance in areas that blur the line between physical safety and national security, starting with TSA vetting.
The proposed rule includes explicit expectations for TSA vetting for certain covered personnel, potentially up to a Level 3 security threat assessment, and you have to understand why. The BVLOS drone is often used to inspect critical infrastructure, power grids, pipelines, telecom towers. If a pilot or a key operations person is compromised, that provides a vector for attacking critical national assets.
So what does a candidate need to be ready for when discussing security culture?
They need to show fluency in access control, in facility physical security, secure data handling, and cyber hygiene. The TSA vetting process itself means expecting fingerprinting, recurring background checks, continuous review. It's a non-trivial process, and companies need to know that you understand the gravity of managing sensitive infrastructure data and links.
And we also have remote ID, or RID, compliance as a baseline for all Part 108 aircraft, which also impacts foreign operation.
Correct. All Part 108 aircraft must broadcast remote ID. For foreign operators, say, a European firm bringing their tech for testing in the U.S., if their drone is registered outside the U.S. but it broadcasts RID, they must submit a Notice of Identification, NOI, to the FAA before they fly. And the critical compliance note here, which you have to stress for international candidates, is that there is no automatic bilateral certificate swap between foreign licenses and the FAA's remote pilot certificate.
Oh, that's a big one.
It's huge. If you want to be the RPIC in the U.S., you have to go through the FAA pathway regardless of your credentials from back home.
All right, so we have the regulatory framework locked down. Now let's pivot hard to the mindset. What is the operational philosophy that defines a candidate as operator grade in this new Part 108 world?
It's really the difference between being a pilot and being a reliability engineer. They are quietly grading your risk thinking. They need to hear a clear, repeatable, structured methodology for managing uncertainty. The best candidates present their thought process not as instinct, but as a system, identifying hazards, assigning a probability and severity to that hazard, developing layered mitigations, and then using objective data to reach a final go-no-go decision.
So a weak answer is, I checked the weather and felt good.
Right. A strong answer is, we analyzed the forecast for wind shear at altitude, we plotted it against the aircraft's documented limitation envelope, and because the predicted likelihood of exceeding that limit was X%, our mitigation was to delay until the next operational window. It's all about the data.
That leads directly to the core motto we found in the sources, which is, my goal is to make BVLOS boring, repeatable, predictable, and auditable.
That is the systems mindset versus stick skills dichotomy. Higher managers know they can teach you the controller movements. They cannot teach integrity or deep procedural adherence. So BVLOS hiring is entirely focused on reliability, understanding aircraft limitations, comms architecture redundancy, geofencing parameters, the detect and avoid logic, the defined human role, and the detailed monitoring processes. The goal is to prove that the system is safe regardless of which competent RPIC is sitting at the controls.
And central to that systems mindset is integrity and judgment. If you can't talk about times you chose safety over schedule, you're not getting hired.
Absolutely not. This is the trust test. High-tempo commercial operations run on deadlines, and managers know there's going to be pressure to launch. The best candidates can describe instances where they executed a pre-briefed abort criteria, where they said no to a supervisor or a high-paying client because an objective threshold weather, comms, even crew fatigue was violated. Escalating a safety concern with objective data is a sign of professionalism. Ignoring a threshold is a liability.
This level of accountability requires physical proof, which brings us to documentation as a safety tool. Why is the record-keeping requirement under proposed Part 108 so significant?
The Part 108 proposal really elevates documentation from just a tedious requirement to a core safety control. It highlights significant record-keeping expectations for everything: detailed flight logs, component maintenance history, training currency records, official operating manuals, comprehensive issue logs. The utility is twofold. First, it prevents tribal knowledge operations where safety only exists in one experienced pilot's memory. And second, it is absolutely essential for audit readiness.
Explain what audit readiness looks like in practice.
So if the FAA or a client demands an audit after an incident, say a loss of link or an unexpected encounter with a crewed aircraft, the company has to be able to show, with documentary evidence, what was planned in the mission file, what was actually executed according to the telemetry logs, why the procedure was considered safe, how the crew responded to the contingency, and most importantly, what was changed in the SOPs or training afterward to prevent it from happening again.
If you can't show the paper trail, the FAA just assumes you were being reckless.
That's the default assumption, yes.
I really love the idea of candidates showing this maturity in the interview, the idea of bringing physical, audit-ready examples.
Yes, showing, not just telling, is incredibly powerful. Bring redacted examples of your professional work, a sample flight log that includes pre-flight checks, in-flight data points, and post-flight maintenance notes, or an objective pre-flight checklist you customized for a specific airframe, or a corrective action note you drafted. This instantly signals that you're an operator who views documentation as a functional component of the safety system.
Okay, let's move to the physical lifeline of BVLOS, the command and control link, the C2. This has to be treated as a highly engineered safety control, not just a radio connection.
That's right. The C2 link is the digital tether. BVLOS planning requires mandatory confirmation of comms coverage along the entire route, often using predictive RF mapping tools, and you must define detailed, practiced loss comms procedures for every single segment of the flight.
So what are the necessary details for a really robust C2 answer in an interview? Let's get granular here because this is critical for that final takeaway question.
Okay, we have to talk about objective, non-negotiable data. You need to detail the link margin threshold. This is the measurable signal strength, in dB, below which you must transition to a contingency plan. A safe operation isn't just about maintaining a link, it's about maintaining sufficient margin.
Okay.
Next, you have to define the precise triggers and escalation paths. If the link margin drops below that threshold, what is the instant automated trigger? Does the aircraft enter a loiter, begin a predefined return to launch, or RTL sequence, or execute a forced landing? You also have to detail who on the ground gets notified, the flight coordinator, the ops supervisor, and when that notification happens.
So the focus isn't on fixing the link mid-flight, but on executing the predefined safe state.
Exactly. The safe state is the non-negotiable action. It ensures the aircraft, even without pilot input, reverts to a predictable, contained state that minimizes risk. And finally, you need proof of practice. Can you detail how often you conduct mandated loss link drills and how you log the results of those drills to confirm the system performs as designed?
If we connect this discipline back to infrastructure clients, we have to talk about the growing importance of cybersecurity and physical security. Why has cyber hygiene become a flight safety issue, not just an IT issue?
Because the link, the sensor data, the ground control station, and the mission planning software are all network devices. If any of those systems are attacked through malware, spoofing, or jamming, the physical safety of the aircraft and the integrity of the data are compromised. Safety depends entirely on the control and integrity of the digital systems.
So what are the concrete expectations for a BVLOS candidate in this integrated security realm?
You need to be able to discuss layered controls. This starts with physical security, controlling access to the launch site, maintaining a strict chain of custody for the airframe, and secure storage of sensitive data hardware.
Okay.
On the cybersecurity side, you have to be ready to discuss policies for network access control, device hardening, regular patching, encrypted data transfer protocols, and a culture of reporting anomalies, like suspected GPS spoofing or C2 link jamming. For clients in critical infrastructure, this preparedness and response culture is fundamental because the drone is acting as an extension of their national security profile.
All right, knowledge is the foundation, but judgment is the structure. To get hired, you have to translate all this regulatory and systems knowledge into compelling, structured stories that prove your decision-making under pressure. This is where the STAR Plus framework comes in.
BVLOS interviews are behavioral, and they reward precision. STAR provides that structure. Situation, setting the precise context and constraints, including external pressure. Task, defining the mission objective and the specific acceptance criteria, what success looks like. Action, detailing the specific decisions, checklists used, communication protocols, and contingencies executed. And R, the result, the quantifiable outcome, metrics, and whether the objective was achieved.
But the BVLOS operator needs the multiplier, the plus safety lesson. Why can't a candidate just end with the successful result?
Because the plus safety lesson is what proves you are a continuously improving professional, not just someone who got lucky. It's the measurable systemic improvement you implemented. What precise update was made to the SOPs, the training curriculum, the checklist, or the risk model so that if this happens again, the system is more resilient, end quote. If you just tell a success story, you prove competence. If you add the safety lesson, you prove maturity and leadership.
Let's apply this to the non-negotiable scenarios interviewers use to test trust. Case file 1, the abort story. This is the trust test, forcing the candidate to choose integrity over efficiency.
It is. They're testing your go-no-go discipline, and they want to hear objective criteria, not a gut feeling. A strong STAR plus answer starts with a high-pressure situation. You were on site, the client was on the clock, the weather window was closing, you had significant schedule pressure. The task was to complete the inspection before the deadline. The trigger for the abort must be objective, not subjective. For example, during the pre-flight comms check, the link margin was 1 dB below our defined minimum threshold, or an unexpected TFR was issued for the area we were about to enter.
And what was the professional accuracy in that case?
The action was immediate execution of the pre-briefed abort criteria. Recovery of the aircraft, calm communication with the crew and client explaining which objective threshold was violated, and meticulous documentation of the decision. You log it in the flight log and the risk file. The result was a delayed mission, but an intact safety record.
And the winning soundbite that really defines that maturity.
We followed the data. The mission wasn't delayed because we didn't want to fly. It was delayed because a critical objective safety threshold was violated. We aborted, documented why, and prevented a bad decision from turning a simple delay into a costly incident.
Case file 2 is the lost link, no drama scenario, the ultimate test of contingency competence. We stressed earlier that lost link has to be a designed event, not a surprise.
Yeah, if link loss causes panic, your system is faulty. Your answer has to be layered across the 3 operational phases.
Okay, so pre-flight.
Pre-flight. You detail how you confirmed comms coverage with an RF map and define the exact preloaded failsafe behavior. The RTL sequence, defined altitude change, loiter location. This ensures the aircraft's path is predictable.
And in-flight.
In-flight is the most crucial part. The trigger, for example, the link dropping below XDB for Y seconds, causes the aircraft to instantly enter its safe state. Your action as the RPIC or flight coordinator is not to frantically try to regain control, but to execute the containment actions. You communicate the emergency protocol to the ground crew, you monitor the conformance of the automatic maneuver, and you ensure the predefined contingency zone stays clear.
And then the essential plus safety lesson for a lost link incident.
You have to log the event, preserve all the telemetry data for forensic analysis, and if the root cause was systemic, say, unexpected localized interference, the plus safety lesson is updating the pre-flight comms survey checklist to specifically check for that type of interference in the future. The reliability soundbite holds true. BVLOS isn't about never losing link, it's about making link loss boring because the contingency system worked exactly as engineered.
Our final scenario, case file 3, deals with detect and avoid, or DAA, mindset. How do you ensure separation when you can't physically see the traffic?
DAA is the technical core of safe BVLOS. A strong answer has to demonstrate a layered approach to risk. You have to acknowledge that DAA relies on both non-cooperative and cooperative detection. We start with the strategic layer. Strategic deconfliction, using ADSP services to separate by time and space. Then we rely on conformance monitoring to stay in our approved safety bubble. But the actual immediate DAA responsibility requires technology.
Can we differentiate between active and passive DAA systems? This is where the technical depth is really required.
Absolutely. Active DAA relies on cooperative systems, primarily integrating with the National Airspace System by detecting signals from crewed aircraft transponders, like ADSB out. This tells you where other cooperative aircraft are. However, not all aircraft are cooperative, especially smaller, low-flying recreational aircraft or older helicopters.
And that's where passive DAA comes in.
Exactly. Passive DAA systems use onboard technology like optical sensors, radar, or acoustic arrays to detect non-cooperative targets that are not broadcasting their position. The challenge here is ensuring those sensors are certified and reliable under all operational conditions. The operator is responsible for understanding the failure modes of both active and passive systems.
So let's run the critical test scenario. You're conducting a pipeline inspection along an approved corridor, relying on DAA sensors, and an unexpected, low-altitude, non-cooperative helicopter appears visually close to your defined safety boundary. What is the immediate professional response?
The primary priority is predictability and containment, as dictated by your approved operational plan. The response is immediate execution of the pre-briefed contingency maneuver. This is usually a sharp descent, a quick hold, or an emergency landing within your approved operational area. You immediately trigger internal crew communication, report the event as a serious near miss, and only once the containment action is completed do you begin the process of understanding what went wrong, what the DA system failed to detect, or why the separation criteria were breached. You never, ever try to outfly the threat. You immediately remove yourself from the equation and prioritize containment. Then, you meticulously document the failure in a near-miss report, and you update your corridor or risk model.
We've built the system, we've established a judgment. Now, let's look at where these high-level jobs actually exist. Who is hiring the operator with a Part 108 mindset? Let's map the BVLOS job market.
The market has really matured into 3 distinct sectors, and they're all looking for systems operators. First, you have the drone delivery networks, think Amazon Prime Air, Wing, Zipline. These companies operate complex, high-frequency manufactured systems. Their culture is often aligned with aerospace manufacturing, extremely strict compliance, and focus on mass repeatability. Roles there are hub operations manager, RPIC, and crucially, safety manager or director. Their interview question is all about throughput. Can you run a repeatable operation safely with 99.99% reliability across 500 flights a day? They want people who can manage logistics and data precision.
What about the industrial inspection?
That's the second sector. Industrial inspection and drone-in-a-box solutions like Percepto or American Robotics. Their clients' utilities, oil and gas, heavy manufacturing are buying reduced risk and defensible data for regulatory reporting. The roles include deployment technician, regulatory specialists, and data processing analysts. The culture demands meticulous attention to logging and auditing. Their key test is, can you prevent and proactively identify unknowns, sensor drift, comms degradation, and prove you did it with audit logs? The paper trail is the final product they sell to their clients.
Interesting.
The third major area is rail and linear infrastructure, epitomized by companies like BNSF Railway. Inspecting thousands of miles of track or pipeline corridors demands centralized operations and rigorous consistency across vast geographies. They're hiring remote pilots or dispatchers who manage flights that can be miles long, and mission planners who have to overlay comms, weather, and NOTAMs across huge, dynamic operating environments. That culture values centralized command and long-range contingency planning.
And we can't forget the ecosystem that supports all of this scale. The airspace, UTM, ADSP layer.
That's a fast-growing, high-tech sector. Companies like Airspace Link or Unifly are building the software infrastructure for strategic deconfliction and conformance monitoring. They hire people who understand both code and flight operations. Roles include product manager, focused on UTM and flight ops, and security engineer. They need operators who can translate complex regulatory requirements into functional software requirements.
The journey toward these professional roles is often blocked by sticking to old, hobbyist mindsets. So let's crush the common misconceptions candidates have to avoid. Myth number 1 is a classic.
Myth 1, EVLOS jobs are mostly about being an amazing pilot. That is the biggest trap. Reality is, employers hire risk managers with disciplined aviation judgment. If you prove integrity and systems fluency, they will train you on the specific platform. They need assurance that you can manage a checklist in an emergency, not that you can thread a needle in a stable hover. System thinking is the differentiator. Stick skills are just the prerequisite.
Myth number 2 addresses the regulatory transition.
Myth 2. If Part 108 comes, waivers won't matter anymore. This is fundamentally false. Experience successfully operating under a Part 107 waiver or exemption will remain highly valued for years. Why? Because it proves you have institutional knowledge of regulatory constraints, that you can build a rigorous, bespoke safety case from the ground up, and that you have survived the intense scrutiny of the FAA. Waiver experience proves maturity under pressure.
And the final misconception, a major legal risk point, relates to international candidates.
Myth 3. Cross-border flying is just don't cross the line. It is so much more complex. International operations involve certification pathway complexity, understanding specific remote ID rules for foreign registered aircraft, and critically, candidates must acknowledge there is no automatic bilateral license conversion between foreign pilot licenses and the U.S. FAA certificate. Assuming otherwise creates legal exposure for the company, and an interviewer will immediately spot that gap in compliance knowledge.
Bringing it all together, the end product of this entire system is defensible data. That's the data quality spine of BVLOS operations.
You're not hired to fly, you're hired to deliver defensible, high-quality data. Candidates have to be fluent in the quality assurance, the QA, workflow. You need to discuss how you check and validate acceptance criteria before you fly, things like ensuring sufficient image overlap, verifying sensor calibration status, and confirming GPS metadata integrity.
So it sounds like the pilot is also a data technician.
Precisely. You must also define clear redo criteria. If you flew a mapping mission and the telemetry shows excessive side lap variation, what's the objective threshold that triggers a mission redo? You have to treat the data product as rigorously as you treat the flight controls.
And what's the winning mindset here that synthesizes flight safety and data fidelity?
The winning mindset is this. If the data won't stand up in an engineering review, the mission wasn't successful. The flight itself is merely a means to an auditable, defensible end product that generates client value. That realization is the mark of a truly professional BVLOS operator.
So what does this all mean? The takeaway here is that the BVLOS career path is shifting dramatically and permanently. It's moving from requiring exceptional permission to requiring exceptional resilient systems. Safety, compliance, and scale are the 3 essential legs of the stool, and your personal verifiable judgment is the non-negotiable foundation. Let's synthesize the final high-value points that define the BVLOS employer trinity for you. First, judgment is non-negotiable. You have to be able to describe objective, data-driven abort criteria and practice contingency actions without ego or defensiveness. You follow the process, not the pressure. Second, the Part 108 direction mandates that BVLOS operations must be built around FAA-approved operating areas, confirmed comms coverage along the entire route, and disciplined, layered lost comms procedures. And third, you have to understand the ADSD concept. You need to explain the functions of strategic deconfliction designing safety into the plan and conformance monitoring proving execution stayed safe in clear operational terms.
The highest value BVLOS operators are those who internalize that they are managing a system of risk, not just flying an aircraft. They're the ones who can look a hiring manager in the eye and say, I'm not here to be a hero, I'm here to be reliable. Reliability in this industry means designing a system that is resilient to both human error and technological failure. If you are aiming for that professional level, you have to integrate every piece of knowledge we discussed into auditable, repeatable action. This raises the single most important question for you to consider tonight. If you had to sketch your entire lost link decision tree on a whiteboard right now, could you connect every point from the link drop threshold in decibels to the specific automated failsafe maneuver to the ground crew notification protocol to the exact post-flight log entry required, back to a piece of evidence you logged or a procedure you formally practiced? That gap between theoretical knowledge and auditable, practiced action is your immediate next step in becoming a high-level BVLOS operator. That's a wrap on today's mission, Commander. See above, go beyond, get ahead. For more training, tools, and intel, head to skycommander.ca. If you learned something new, share it, subscribe, and leave us a 5-star debrief.